Hello again. This is MaryAnn Armbruster from the Lafayette Parish Master Gardeners. Thank you for joining us today on Get Growing, where we'll talk about fall vegetable gardening. Now, I know it doesn't seem like fall yet, but actually this is the best time to think about your fall vegetable garden because you're soon going to have to start planting it if you want anything to harvest in the fall and winter. So we're going to talk about why plant in the fall, what to plant in the fall, when to plant what, where to put your garden, frost dates, water, air, and feeding. So why do you want to plant in the fall? Well, the weather's cooler for one thing, and it's a lot more comfortable to work in the garden. Rainfall's a little more consistent. It's great to have the variety that cool weather vegetables provide in the kitchen. The warm weather vegetables are great to have, but not everything can grow in that heat. It provides us something to harvest throughout the fall and into the winter, and the pest load gets a lot lighter as the weather cools. Row covers easily extend the season for you. The biggest problem with fall gardens is that pest load is high to start. The transplants are harder to find. Starting seed, easy to do, but it takes thought and preparation. To start seed for fall, you have to determine your proper planting period, back that up 6 to 12 weeks depending on the crop, and plant the seed. Care for the plants until time to transplant outdoors. Raise the transplant indoors when it's too hot to plant them out, and starting from seed gives you a much greater choice in varieties. So what vegetables like fall and winter weather? The cole crops, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, that sort of things. The root crops, turnips, beets. The leaf crops and greens, peas, artichokes, and asparagus, all love fall and winter weather around here. So you can plant the cole crops from August through early spring. Broccoli you can set out any time between August and February. That's transplants. The head size is determined by spacing. If you want 3 to 4 inch heads, you need to use 9 to 12 inch spacing. If you want 8 to 10 inch heads, use 16 to 18 inch spacing. These can get to be pretty big plants, and you're only going to get one head out of each, so determine how big you want those heads to be. Plant early, mid-season, mid-late, and late varieties. You can plant them all at one time, but you'll get a staggered harvest. If you only like one variety, or if it's your favorite variety, then you can plant that one variety at spaced times across the season in order to get a continual harvest. Brussel sprouts you can plant August through February again, and they're very large. They may need staking when they start producing. You can harvest them when the little sprouts get to be 1.5 inches or larger. If you've never seen Brussels sprouts growing, be prepared. They're very interesting. Fairly small, leafy plant to start with. But when the heads start to form, you get a tall stalk, and it can be 2.5 feet long. And the little sprouts grow up along that stalk. Quite interesting. Cauliflower you can plant from the beginning of July through the middle of October, and again from the middle of January through the middle of February. The head size is again controlled by spacing. If you want 3 to 4 pound heads, space 10 to 12 inches. If you want 5 to 7 pound heads, space 16 to 18 inches. These plants are heavy users of molybdenum. A deficiency in this mineral causes narrow, distorted leaves with open, loose curds, not the pretty tight head that you're looking for. They can handle temperatures to the low 20s, but anything lower than that can ruin the crop. We don't get that too often here, though. More like it's too much or too little water or too much heat that's going to affect your cauliflower crop here. Cabbage transplant mid-August through the end of January. Again, the head size is controlled by plant spacing. If you want a 3 to 4 pound head, 10 to 12 inches of spacing between plants. A 5 to 7 pound head, 16 to 18 inches of spacing. Plant varieties with different maturities, or stagger the planting of one or two varieties to extend the harvest. Harvest them when the heads are firm and the outer leaf begins to curl at the edge. But they'll hold in the field for weeks. You don't have to harvest them as soon as they're ready. There are many varieties of cabbage. For the fall crop, you can do an early, a medium, and a medium-late variety, and then there are winter and spring varieties. There are two types of Chinese cabbage. There's the Napa type, which is a fairly solid head that's elongated, and it's the same width top to bottom. And then there's the pak choi type, which is small at the bottom with a very prominent rib that flares out at the top and becomes more leafy. Either one of them, they taste pretty much the same. But especially the Napa type makes a good substitute for lettuce. Onions. We use a lot of onions here in Acadiana, and you need to know a lot about them to grow them well. First thing you need to know if you're buying seeds or sets or plants, you need short or neutral day varieties. Onions are photosensitive. They respond tremendously to the length of the day. And we don't have the day lengths that trigger the long day varieties to form bulbs. So if you plant a long day variety here, you might get a lot of nice green onion leaves, but that's all you're going to get. It will never bulb for you. So make sure you buy the right seeds or sets or transplants, either short day or day neutral varieties. Sweets do not store well. So just know that ahead of time. Sweet onions do not store well. They'll last in your refrigerator for a while, but that's it. Transplants should have more than 3 true leaves, but still be less than 1/4 of an inch in diameter. So when you're looking for your transplants, you don't want them too big and you don't want them too small. If they're too small, they just don't survive well. If they're too large, as soon as the temperature goes up, they're going to bolt. They'll never produce a bulb for you. So plant seeds outdoors mid-September to mid-October. They require 135 to 210 days to harvest in cool weather. Plant seeds indoors under lights 10 to 12 weeks ahead of time, and they'll leave the lights on 10 to 12 hours a day. Any longer than that, you're going to get puny bulbs. So limit your artificial light to 12 hours a day max. Plant sets mid-December or January. You want to plant them 2 to 4 inches apart with the base 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch deep. If you plant them too shallow, you're going to get a flat bulb. If you plant them too deep, you're going to get a pointed oval. Maintain even moisture. Do not over-fertilize and weed them often. They really don't like competition from a lot of weeds. Harvest when 50 to 60% of the tops have fallen over. Then you should go over and kick the rest of the tops over for a day or so before pulling them all out. Once harvested, keep them dry. Other alliums, onions or alliums, all of them. Leeks, plant those from seed. Or grow your own transplants. From seed, they require 120 to 150 days to harvest. You can plant them September through December. Transplants require 80 to 90 days, and you can plant those in December or January. To grow your own transplants, seed 2 to 3 months before they're going to be needed. Space them about 3 to 4 inches apart to get good-sized leeks. Most varieties are good for Louisiana. Some I've grown have been Blue Soleils, Carentan, King Richard, and Autumn Giant, and they've all performed well for me. Shallot bulbs and garlic cloves. Plant them in October and November. Space them 4 to 6 inches. Then there's elephant garlic. It's very mild. There's Creole garlic. It's medium mild, and it doesn't store well. There's Italian garlic. They make small pinkish cloves. They're strong, and they store very well. Beets. Plant this seed mid-August through early March. When the weather gets hot, the beets will go to seed. They will bolt. Beet seeds are multiples. This is one plant that you just can't get away from thinning. When you look at a beet seed, it really isn't a beet seed. It's 3 or 4 beet seeds altogether. So plant it and then go in and when they're a few inches tall, thin them out. But don't pull them out. First of all, they're perfectly edible as microgreens. Throw them in a salad. Secondly, you don't want to disturb the root that you're going to leave in place. So use fine scissors and cut them off at the base and just leave one plant for each seed space. Beets require boron. You can make a mixture of 1 to 2 tablespoons of borax per gallon of water and spray that on the leaves 3 to 4 weeks after planting. Boron-deficient roots are going to have a water-soaked brown area near the center. They're best when they're 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. Moisture stress will cause long, pointed roots. Some recommended varieties are Cylindra, Detroit Dark Red, Ruby Queen, Red Acre, Chariot, Solo, Centurion, and Scarlet Supreme. I've grown Cylindra, Detroit Dark Red, and Ruby Queen. They're all good, but my favorite is Cylindra just because of the way it grows. It lengthens. Instead of just making a round bulb, it makes an oval bulb, which gives you a lot more slices, good full-size slices per bulb. So it just gives you more for every seed that you plant. Radishes. Plant these throughout the cool season. You might want to plant them every week or 10 days, so you always have fresh radishes ready to go. Thin them to 1 to 2 inches apart, and again, use scissors to thin these. The greens you may throw into a salad. Maintain an even moisture. There are short-season cultivars and long-season cultivars. The short-season cultivars take 21 to 30 days from seed to harvest. This is a great thing to have kids plant because they get almost instant gratification. 30 days is pretty short. The varieties that lend themselves to this treatment are Cherry Belle, Champion, Sparkler, Snowbell, Easter Egg, French Breakfast, and White Icicle. Then there are the long-season cultivars. These take 50 to 70 days. Misato Rose, Round Black Spanish, White Chinese, Sakurahima, and German Beer are all long-season cultivars. Then there are some mid-season varieties, but those are for spring planting. They don't operate real well over the winter. Kohlrabi, an interesting vegetable. You can plant these throughout the cool season. Provide even moisture, side dress them about once a month, harvest at 3 to 4 inches. Anything larger, they can be fibrous and tough. Recommended varieties for the area are Early White Vienna, Early Purple Vienna, Grand Duke, Winner, Rapid Star, or Express Forever. Carrots, some of my favorites. And children love these too, especially when you plant the strange colors. Plant them mid-August through early March. Thin them to 1 to 2 inches. Again, you can use the little greens in salads. Recommended varieties are Danvers 126, Apache, Choctaw, Enterprise, Maverick, or Tasty Peel. Personally, I like the colors, especially the purple ones, like Purple Dragon, Cosmic Purple, Purple Haze, Purple Elite, Deep Purple, and Purple 68. Now, Purple Haze and Cosmic Purple have purple skins and orange flesh. Purple Dragon has a small orange center with mostly purple flesh. Purple Elite has purple skin with a yellow core, and Deep Purple has very tiny white core. Purple carrots have high levels of carotenoids, but also high levels of phenolics like anthocyanins. That's what give it that purple color. So when you use the purple carrots, you're getting even more nutrition in your carrot. Turnips. Plant these August through February. They require 40 to 50 days to mature. You want smooth, continuous growth to make good-sized, good-tasting turnips. You want to get even moisture, fairly even temperature. So plant them where you think the temperature is going to be fairly smooth over that period. Lettuces. Now, like I said, lettuces can be touchy here. They don't do well in the heat of the summer at all, so winter is your ideal time to grow them. Plant lettuces from mid-August through October, and then again in January through early March. Space them about 12 inches apart. Start harvesting with thinning and continue by choosing the outer leaves or cutting them off just above the crown. There are literally hundreds of varieties of lettuce, but the loose leaf types work best here. I wouldn't go for your standard head lettuce types. The heads just don't form well in our weather. So, some recommended loose leaf types are prize head, red sails, slow bolt, Simpson Elite, salad bowl, ruby red, B.S. Simpson, red salad bowl, sunset, and Waldman's green. Recommended romaine types are green forest, green towers, Paris Island Cos, Sierra, and Nevada. Those are two things, not Sierra Nevada. The recommended bib types, that's as close to a head as I would work with here, are Buttercrunch, Oakleaf, and Ermos. That's E-R-M-O-S-E. Personally, I love Lola Rosa, Red Oakleaf, Brune d'Hiver, and Forellenschluss. I love saying that word. It translates to speckled trout's back, and that's what it looks like. It's a green leaf covered with little red speckles. And realize that anytime you have red on a lettuce leaf, you're adding extra nutrition because of the anthocyanins. Other salad greens. There are some things that you may never have heard about. Have you ever heard of mâche or corn salad? This is a winter green exclusively. It cannot take heat. You plant it October through March. It has a very sweet, nutty flavor. You harvest the entire head, and the heads are small. They may be no more than 2 to 3 inches across. Their varieties are Veet, green corn salad Dutch, Vert de Cambrai, Vert Étampes, Bistro, or Piedmont. Now, if you leave a few of these in the ground to go to seed, most of them will self-sow, and you'll get your next harvest gratuitously. They're low-growing, never more than 3 or 4 inches tall, with a spatulate leaf. Either be elongated spatula or a short, stubby spatula. And you do harvest the entire, just snip the root off and you're good to go. Other salad greens. You can plant these October through March again. Endive, radicchio, or chicory. Same plant. Florida depart or emerald. Endive chicory is a bitter green that adds interest to salads. It comes in green, red, and frisee types. And you can grow Witloof or Belgian Endive. Very expensive to buy in the grocery, not too difficult to do yourself. You grow the plant out, preferably in a pot. Cut it off, put another pot over it, and cover the hole in the pot because you want no light to get in. Let it grow for the next few weeks, and you will get a small 5 to 6 inch head of tightly wrapped, almost pure white leaves, very, very light green. And that is Belgian Endive. And you're going to pay $5-6 a pound for it, but it's really very little trouble to grow yourself. Then there's Escarole. The recommended varieties are Florida Deep Heart and Full Heart. Escarole is similar to Endive, but has a looser head and broader, less ruffled leaves. Swiss chard. I love Swiss chard. It's a great green, substitutes for lettuce very nicely in the winter, and you can also cook it. Makes a nice steamed or saute it with garlic, makes a really great side dish. You can plant it from mid-August through the end of October, and again mid-January through early May. It's a perennial. It will come back. It's resistant to bolting. Its seed is a multiple, just like beets. In fact, it's beets without the root. So thin with scissors again. Eat the thinnings. You can crop the leaves, take them off one at a time and eat them that way. It's not necessary to take the whole head off at once. There are many varieties. They're all good. I just picked the highly colored ones like Bright Lights, Magenta Sunset, Rhubarb, or Ruby Red. It's a beautiful plant. It fits into the front garden among other perennials very well. Greens. In general, heat causes bitterness and bolting means going to seed. If you see the center of the plant beginning to elongate, that's the start of the seed stalk. Regularly clean up yellowed or damaged leaves. You can either cut individual leaves or you can cut the whole plant above the crown, and the crown will produce more, as long as you don't damage that crown. Turnip greens are good August through February. Mustard greens, August through mid-March. They take 35 to 50 days to harvest, and tender green is the most heat tolerant. Then there are collards. You can plant them March 15th all the way through October 15th. They take 75 days to harvest and are the most cold tolerant. Spinach. Recommended varieties are Bloomsdale Longstanding, which is open pollinated, meaning you can save seed from it. Hybrid Savoys are Melody 7R, Hybrid 7, Tai, Unipack 151. Semi-Savoy types are Greyhound, and smooth leaf types are Ballet or Tiger Cat. It's hard to grow here. The heat impedes both germination and causes bolting. So you get it on both ends. If it's too hot too early, you don't get germination. If it's too hot later on, you get bolting. So plant after it cools. You're better off with a fall crop. Your chances are much better for a fall crop than they are for a spring crop. We tend to get too hot here too fast. So plant after it cools, early October through the end of February. Space seeds 1 to 2 inches apart. For kale, space them 6 to 12 inches apart. Recommended varieties are Blue Vates, Blue Night, and Lacinato. It is easy to grow through the winter, no problem. You can plant them mid-July through May. And really, don't be discouraged if your spinach doesn't do well. It isn't you, it's the weather. Our heat is just erratic, and it doesn't like heat. In the spring, we tend to get heat too fast. Just as they're beginning to grow up and look really nice, here comes a heat wave, and bam, they've bolted. So don't be discouraged with spinach. It's only a couple of bucks for some seeds, so try it. It may work. Artichokes. Most places, artichokes are perennials. Here, we have to grow them as an annual. You can plant the seeds from mid-July through early August or set out transplants September through early November. The plant will grow through the winter and produce the chokes in the spring. Artichokes require space. That tiny little seed or that little bitty transplant is going to take about 3 or 4 feet in diameter of space. They're good with high rows. Lift them 10 to 12 inches above the rest of the ground or in raised beds. They like soil moisture, even moisture, to get tender chokes. Stressed plants produce bitter, woody chokes. Mulch is your friend here, most definitely. Recommended varieties are Imperial Star, Green Globe, and Emerald. Asparagus, one of those you either love it or you hate it. And it's expensive, so you might as well grow it if you can. Prepare the soil now for planting in the spring. Asparagus is a perennial. You want a high 10 to 12 inch row or a good raised bed, 4 to 6 feet wide. Now, for me, 6 feet is too wide. I can't reach to the center of it, and I don't want to walk on it. So 4 feet is as wide as my beds go. Add compost and manure now, and fertilize with 6 to 7 pounds of a balanced organic fertilizer per 100 feet several weeks before planting. There are older types like Martha Washington. These are going to produce male and female plants. Unfortunately, the female plants spend a lot of energy making seed, and you don't want that. So the male hybrids, there are hybrids that are made just so that you can get very few females out of them. That's what they selected for. The male hybrids produce more edible shoots than the older varieties because the older varieties are 50-50. Half of them are going to be males. Recommended varieties are Jersey Giant, Purple Passion, Jersey Knight, Jersey Supreme, Jersey King, or Jersey Gem. Think they did some things about asparagus in Jersey? Celery. Planted from seed, plant that October and November. Plant transplants in December and January. They like moisture, so mulch them well and water them often and deeply. Peas, shelling, snow, and snap. All of them, peas. Plant peas in September and January. So at the beginning of the winter end of the fall and sort of end of the winter. Recommended varieties are Mr. Big, which is an all-American selection, Novella 2, Oregon Sugar Pod, Sugar Ann, another AAS selection, and Sugar Snap, also AAS. Now, I've grown Oregon Sugar Pod and Sugar Snap, and that's the varieties I like. I'm not going to go to the trouble of shelling peas. Thank you. I can buy frozen peas too easily. I've tried Novella too. I didn't have a whole lot of luck with them. They didn't produce super well. But the snap peas or snow peas grow very, very well for me, and I think they're very little trouble to put in. So where do you put a fall garden? On a site that has at least 6 hours of sun per day. More is better for most crops. Ideally, you should watch the area throughout the day, throughout the year. But at least watch it throughout a day and see where the shade falls. You would prefer a site that's basically level. That's not really too much trouble here, but it is much easier on you and it avoids runoffs and erosion. You can terrace a sloped area should you happen to run into one, but where are you going to find one here? Even things that are not super heat lovers like broccoli, kale, and cabbage need that bare minimum of 6 hours of sun. 8 would be better. So think about that when you decide where to put it. Also, you want it where you have easy access to water. Schlepping back and forth to the faucet is hard. Water's heavy. 1 gallon of water weighs more than 8 pounds. And you put 4 or 5 of them together, and man, you're getting a workout. Also, put it where you can see it easily. Out of sight is out of mind. You can enjoy it a lot more if you have it close so that you can see it and be in it all the time. There's a Chinese proverb that I absolutely love, and it is so very, very true. The best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. Raised beds, I'm always going to be a fan of raised beds. Not everybody is, but they're way more efficient. You don't have to water, fertilize, and weed everything. You just do the beds. And they're much easier to do companion planting on. Raising beds ensures that the plant roots are not sitting in water, and that's really important to hear with this, with the clay that we tend to have here. You can use topsoil, bag soil, compost, sand, vermiculite, peat, etc. to fill the beds. Top them with compost or worm castings. A north to south orientation of the beds is best. It allows the most sunshine to your plants, but if the best thing you can do for your area is east to west, it's not going to hurt anything. If you're going to stake or trellis, install them prior to or just as you're planting. Y'all basically know how to do a row garden. You till it, you have someone else till it, put the area in the sun near the water source and inside of your kitchen window, and you plant your seeds. Now you can begin to notice my bias here, please, but long-term beds are just so much easier. You don't have to fight that tilling all the time. So what to plant and when to plant it? Well, basically you have to decide that. Plant what you like to eat. It doesn't do much good to plant kohlrabi if you've never tasted it and you don't know what it's going to be like, and you all hate it when you do. You know? But then again, on the other hand, trying it isn't going to hurt anything. The Louisiana Home Vegetable Gardening Guide will tell you what to plant when. You'll see that there really are things that you can plant now all the way through February. So use that guide. It's available from the LSU Ag Center at www.lsuagcenter.com. It gives specific dates for planting most vegetables. It gives planting depths, time to harvest, fertilizing requirements, everything that you need. You can get 2 varieties. You can buy a big bound book for $10, which is a real bargain. Or you can get most of that information, the really important stuff, the when to plant, planting depths, time to harvest, and fertilizing, in a free download, which you can print off yourself. Frost dates. These are really important to know. Around here, our last frost date is about February 20th, or that's the 50%. And what does that really mean? It means it's a crapshoot. 50-50, guys. You know what that means. 50% of the time you're going to have another frost. 50% you're not. By March 10th, you're up to 90%. So that's a pretty safe date. Our first frost date in the fall is generally around November 28th. Here's a little map that kind of shows you what happens in the spring. So when we give you a date, you can tell it's going to be affected by where you live. If you live in the lower part of Lafayette Parish, it's going to be different than if you live up in St. Landry or in Vermilion. So be aware of your local frost dates. Now let's talk about water. Water is an essential for healthy, productive plants, period. Gardens, any kind of plants. Nutrients are dissolved in water in the soil. The water and the nutrients surround soil aggregates. They are then absorbed by root hairs that touch them. They're used in the plant to make carbohydrates and proteins, and they're released back into the soil to help feed the microherd. So how much water do you need? Depends totally on the stage of growth. Seeds need fairly consistent moisture, but they can't be soaking. You soak them and they'll rot. Dry them out and they'll die. Seedlings need regular water but can dry slightly in between. New transplants need more frequent watering. Established plants should get about 1 inch per week. Watering deeply and infrequently is a whole lot better than watering a little bit every day. So once a week, put 1 inch of water on the plants so that they get a solid inch all the way across, as if it were raining. Supplement rainfall only if necessary. So if it rains, don't water. There are a lot of watering tools available. Watering cans, hoses, sprinklers, drip irrigation. Small gardens can be watered with a watering can, but I wouldn't recommend it for larger ones. Remember, water's heavy. But cans can be very useful for seeds, young seedlings, and new transplants. They allow you to put water exactly where you want it. Hoses are great for moving water, but again, standing there watering a large garden by hand is very time-consuming to do correctly. If it's used selectively for plants that need it, that's fine. But most people just don't have the patience or the time to give the plants the deep watering that makes for the best growth. Sprinklers work, but they put water everywhere, including the air, the sidewalk, and the weeds edging the garden. Drip irrigation and soaker hoses put the water where it does the most good, at the roots, without watering the leaves, so they're not facilitating the development of disease spores. Also, when you don't water from above, you don't get splash. Splash can move disease spores from the soil to the plant. Air. Most people think water for plants, but they don't think air. Oxygen is just as necessary to healthy plant life as water. Never, ever work wet soil. When deciding whether to work the soil, if plant has optimal water content, if you take a handful of it and gently hold it to make it form a shape, it will hold together pretty easily. But if you poke at it, it'll break apart easily too. Okay? That's optimal. If it does that, you can work it with no problem. If it won't hold a shape, it's too dry. If it won't break apart, it's way too wet. And working wet soil destroys soil structure. It blocks air. You want soil that's open and friable with good tilth. So we've planted and we've watered, and now we just sit back and wait for the harvest, right? What about seed germination? Cold ground slows germination and growth. Warm ground speeds it. So soil temperature is vital. If you've got a range of, look at the plant package, and it tells you that it's 10 to 20 days to germination. In the spring, it might be 20 days. In the fall, for your fall garden, when you're planting when it's warm, you're going to be closer to that low end. So plan for that. Okay. So think soil temperature, not air temperature, too. Timing is vital. If you plant at the wrong time, you're going to likely to get, in certain plants anyway, things like broccoli, cauliflower, you're going to get all leaves and maybe button heads. You'll get a beautiful little head, but it'll be 1 inch across. That's all. If it's too cold when you plant, then the seed's going to rot, or the seedlings are going to suffer from damping off. So do you do seeds or transplants? Seeds are cheaper, no doubt about that. And seeds provide a huge variety you can't begin to touch in transplants. In transplants, you might get 10 varieties of tomato, but there are hundreds, maybe thousands. Transplants, however, give you a jump start if you haven't taken the time to start your own seeds at the right time. In addition to that book I told you on vegetable gardening, in the Ag Center, there's copies of printed material on hundreds of vegetables. You can go to their website and download that information for free. It's great information. Googling may provide you with answers, but Anybody can say anything and put it on the internet. Try to look for sites that end in like .edu. That's going to at least be research-based information. So you might want to kind of limit the sources of your info. Also, there are many books in the Lafayette Public Library on gardening in South Louisiana. So if you have a question, you have lots of resources. So when do you harvest? Well, it depends totally on the vegetable. Harvest period, the interval, is going to be listed on the seed packet, but that's going to have a little variation in it. Also found in the Louisiana Vegetable Planting Guide. It'll give you a guide to when it might be ripe. But if you've got specific questions, call the agent. Last but not least, Lafayette Public Library website is LafayettePublicLibrary.org. Lafayette Master Gardeners website is lpmga.org. Lafayette Parish Master Gardeners Association, lpmga.org. Thank you for being with us today. That's it. Follow us on the websites. You can also check out Facebook pages to learn about what's coming next. Looking forward to being with you next time. This is MaryAnn. Get growing.